Hey, welcome to Roleplay Cafe. It's Dale here. I was going to get on here and do a little response video to Jason's video this morning about player facings. We call this About Face. Now, Jason pretty much entailed the realization that the player facing, which at first blush could be just like mechanically speaking, such things as dice duties for the players, take that off the hands of the GM and whatnot, so he can be free to present and narrate the situations that are occurring around the players for them to react to. So he said the traits and everything that he stayed away from because he was trying to make Tara more of a old school centric character focused on attribute increases and staying away from traits and abilities and whatnot, except for one trait he had to where Taro basically it seems that Taro has a web of connections that he can kind of call upon and use to get glean some information to help us. Like he mentioned David's session, it was more of a mystery to help us kind of along. And in that respect, it gives the player more agency to imagine and extrapolate from a situation who they may know in the surroundings that could logically, afford us some kind of leverage or upper hand in helping us see through a certain condition or situation that we find ourselves in. In the same respect, the same he mentions my portrayal of Shig during that, and when Jason made Shig for me, but when I got him, usually when I make a character and when I look at the traits and everything, whether or not I am laying out the traits organically in a character creation type mentality where I say, what is this character? And I look at these traits and go, okay, well, no, he would be more this or that, have these traits, and I can get a fuller picture of who this character is. To me, it's not like a list of abilities to say, okay, I can do this ability in this situation. It's more like, who is this character? So the abilities tie into explaining, in effect, almost the character's back history, and who he is or she is. In a simmer room, the lore is that part of what you are good is to put the chaos in order. Or you can be the opposite end of that spectrum and say, or the middle, and you're basically surfing on that razor blade edge of like corruption is a necessary evil, so to speak, even though I know corruption has a little bit of different definition in there that I don't want to get into right now, but nevertheless, be seen as a necessary, right? So you have to contort yourself to where you can take some of it in, but refresh yourself and put it out and use it basically. So it's there to use. You just don't want to burn yourself out on it. And then there's others that really kind of almost give themselves into the corruption, right? And goblins, I mean, they typically live 25 years before they go into hibernation, so they're burning the candle from both ends anyway. This is kind of what I saw that Shig's worldview would lean toward more of that. Not to mention the way the certain town he came from was more from the refuge area and the back alleys and whatever. He wouldn't necessarily be welcome. So he is a dirty despot, filthy. You see what I'm saying? So it would go to that. That's why I portrayed him like he did. And he had curse, and I just described how he would implement his cursing. Throwing scat or filth, and using cursing language at his foes, anything he wanted to curse. He's a filthy little bugger. So that, to me, when I step into a role and I'm playing it, I don't partition it off in my mind to say stop. So much as to say stop and what could I use to gain leverage on this situation. I incorporate what he does. It informs me of who this character is, his traits and abilities, and how he would look at the world. And I also combine with his worldview to then be in character and play character and respond in kind as Shig would whenever he's faced with what's going on in the world that he is in. So that's what the traits and abilities, that's how I take them in and how they inform me of the character more so. So in that respect, they're already, they're in your holster to take out and do, even fortune telling or whatnot. That's how he's going to approach things in his mindset. And so they just incorporate it into play. So, but even, if, I don't necessarily personally like a lot of, if you get too many, and I know most role-playing games have, if they can sell more information and more text and supplemental material or whatever like that, they have to make money. They have to generate money and fill the coffers so much to be able to support the industry. And a lot of it breaks down into like having characters and then having lists of skill sets and lists of this and that you can pick from. But it puts the player in the mindset of like you can't do it unless it's listed on your character sheet. So then you're bound by this list of things that you can do. It's really, if you're better off for that, I believe. But nevertheless, that's, you can oftentimes think in terms of min-maxing a character, and really, I think it can be to the detriment of the actual character, because it can be a flood of a text dump as far as what you're reading about this on a character sheet, to be able to see which one is more applicable to a situation that you can pull out and do it. And then it's more like a tactical game in that situation. And people like to play that way. Some people. Lord knows I do if I'm playing, a war game or whatever. But whenever I'm playing a role-playing game, I like to get in character and approach character into a situation in the world and see how they respond in kind. Okay. Now, that is player-facing. Whenever a game, we spoke about Dragon Warriors, Dark Age of Man, any game that opens a door to give more responsibility for players, as opposed to traditional D&D, which basically, that came from a wargaming history anyway, right? H.G. Wells all the way till whenever, it's just down to a microcosm where you're using individuals. But you still had a caller at the table, and you had, 12 people playing along, 24, as many as they could charge to sit into at a table and play games and run through dungeons and whatnot. Roll. Let's cycle through this and see what's going on. And you get your chance to roll and to see if you hit, and what are you using, what weapon. And that was, it sort of set the mold for what followed. Even when they went into, out in the frontier, away from the dungeons and whatnot, it still set that kind of a procedural mindset in play. And it's really geared toward the dungeon master giving the exposition about what is happening, the narrative about what is happening, what you see, what you're facing, and now let's get down to battle. What are you going to do? Whether you're using minis and maps or not, for scale reference and whatnot, which ultimately I have nothing against that as far as like knowing where you are. Lord knows I've been, bit to my own detriment in play with envisioning situations that I thought were closer than actually some of my comrades thought it was further away. So, as far as the imminent danger approaching. So I reacted differently than I would have if I would have been more aware of the situation as it was unfolding and where exactly people were positioned out. No matter if it's just a whiteboard where you're putting X's and O's and saying you're here or there, about so many, you can do it with dialogue. There's so many away, but a lot of discussion and a lot of conversation. And even what I'm saying now can be half missed, right? It happens. It happens. So reference points or whatever like that, nothing gets that. But nevertheless, I digress. As I've said, the video is not about this, but it all is tangentially related. Okay. But the more you get into player facing, if that's just like Simba Room is more so, it keeps you a little bit on rails, like Shadowrun. Hey, let's go do a mission. Or like even, a quest oriented thing, or, you've been hired to do this, or, you go into the Davakar. I tell the guys, like when we ran up to, the Mesa in the Davakar, you got 5 days to come out. That's why in Simba Room, when you go into the Davakar, you get a certain pass for so many days. You can't, it keeps you on task instead of diverging off a task. Okay. Unlike, say, Dark Age of Man, where you can play vanilla and drop them in Dredgewater and say, there's nothing going on. What do you want to do? I'm going to go here, there, whatever. It's totally open. Of course, you can have major amount of dilemmas that can put your back against the wall in Dark Age of Man and say, I got to deal with this. I got to contend with this crap. Everybody's starving here. It's dead of winter. There's things going on, right? There's an army on the ridge about to tear down. What do I do? What are the circumstances putting me in a situation where I may have to react to? You do that too. But nevertheless, when you open that can of worms and you give the player agency to more so respond, and I'm going a little bit beyond what is just player facing the aspect of, like Jason said, Dark Age of Man allows you to do that, but Simba Room, not so much. But it is telling that whenever you have player facing, like Jason said, it's more than just giving dice duty to the players. It is allowing them to, excuse the dogs, I think they're, hello, I'm back again, had a little disconnect. Like I said, the dogs are barking, but nevertheless, the player facing that we spoke about, or Jason spoke about, and I'm responding to in Simba Room, is the first opening of a door to allow greater player agency, as opposed to traditional narrative exposition by the DM that's telling the party what is happening. Sort of a throwback. I remember sending Jason a clip. I think it was Matt Mercer leading Stephen Colbert through a situation, and granted, it was set up in a way to where they could probably go through it within a certain time period. But it was Stephen Colbert leaning in, intently listening to the story that Matt Mercer was telling him. It's kind of like one of those choose your own adventure books. You get to a certain point, and then like so many games, like so many table, as Jason mentioned before, you get options. You say, you got 3 options here. What do you want to do? You got 4 options here. You can do this, or you can do that. You can do the other. And you go, oh, I think I'll do this, right? And it goes in with a choice. Not fully open door to say, just how are you going to do this? Like Jason mentioned, when he likes it, if I would go into a room and say, what do I do? Want to gamble or want to do whatever? Most time when you're playing in role-playing games, any GM will tell you, I did not expect that they would do that. You give players the agency to respond in kind to some situation, and they will come up with something organic that you didn't even suspect, right? A lot of people, I think, maybe some GMs aren't used to dealing with that, or maybe that's about the only thing they've gotten used to dealing with, and not taking their hands off the reins and just giving it to the players and say, where do y'all want to go? Making it up on the fly and letting things go wherever they go. That's freeing. when you get to that point. But I think a lot of most DMs, even traditional DMs, are used to some point the players coming up with some kind of original or out of the box situation to where they solve the situation that they're presented. And those I think those moments create memories for a lot of people. Remember when we did this? Remember when we did that? Or we flooded the cave instead of going in there and then pulled the dead goblins out instead of having to, after the water resided, or whatever. Smoked the troll out of the cave. And then he came out, and then we, trapped him. So players love being creative and coming up with situations like that. And that's traditionally the time that they get to exercise that and get to really play beyond the bounds of just being reactionary with a die roll and say, what do you want to do? Or given, a multitude of multiple, answers to a situation, or that the GM may lay before them that seems like an obvious progression of you can do this or that or the other. So, that's more on the strident end of very linear play. And I think that kind of comes from, like I said earlier, when we sat down and have a lot of people and they would just, a lot of people at the playing table, and then the GM would say, you go into the next room, this is what happens. How do you respond to him? What do you go right or left? In a dungeon, that's a way of limiting choice too. What can you do? You can go right or left or the other. You break out in the wilderness, you can go in any direction, in any method, or any method you want to, by boat or by horse or by whatever. You can contrive, but there's generally, a thing laid out in front of you. You can either take the boat, or you can go over the mountains, do the pass, or you can do this and that. Which way do you want to go? And so give the DM enough prep time the next time to say, let's go through the mountains. I'm going to set up something for them to go through the mountains. Now we changed our mind. We're going by boat. Oh crap. What am I going to do now? Then prep this stuff. So, a lot of times it's like a on-rail shooter, to where if the GM knows where you're going to go, he can lay something out for you. And then you run through that session. And so, like I say, it's on rails. It's very linear, and it's not really anything that you can, it's like bowling with the bumpers up. I know you're going to get to that target, and in games like Simba do have that. It's they use methods to get you to a certain area to get it and bring back. And end up, but the good thing is like getting to express your character through traits and abilities. I think, and I'm really a fan of open gaming. And when Jason said I kind of lean toward that as a player, I do. I do. I remember when we was playing, I think one of the earlier games, Jason was running me through something he was so used to, those moments when you're telling players what to do, and then you're giving them details and exposition, and you throw a little bit more of that icing on that cake, because they kind of sit there and they don't know what to do. They're looking for that option that you lay before them. What do you do? And that's what Jason meant by just be proactive. Tell me what you're doing here. And then get the DM squeaks out a little bit more information. Maybe they need to know a little bit more. So you get used to this pattern of where you're having to just lay down this speech dump in front of the players until they pick it up and run with it. And you feel lucky that you get somebody that says, no, I think we're going to go this way. But it's always, like Jason said, reactionary to what you're laying down. Generally, ultimately, when Jason was running through that time, and he got in a pattern of saying that, like, you're running through the jungle, you're pushing things to the side, you're doing this and that. You finally get to, and I'm like, no, I didn't do any of that. I wanted to go this way. So you pick up, if you got somebody that you're playing with that has been a GM before, like he does, anything that you do, and I call it within arm's reach, I feel like any player should be able to say something. If I'm in the forest, I can pick up a branch or a stick without saying, like, is there one there? So everything should be at least have the leniency, in my opinion, for the players to automatically make assumptions about something. You know, you don't want to break something. I remember in one game with Ivan, I tried to push that. Of course, it's funny because I was playing a little bit of a cad and a thief or whatever that would try to pull things over. And that spilled over into my character. I mean, my player, myself. And when I said something was in the full moon and I was out at night and trying to do that. And he said, nope. You know, it's not, it's this. So there's nothing wrong with having factual things in there that you have to deal with in the world, that you have to navigate around. Like me playing Thane, I was trying to butter it up, whether subconsciously or not. I just laughed and said, okay, you got me. We'll roll on. I have to do that because I love, okay. Whenever the player goes out and says he wants to do this and that, if you give a little bit of player agency and you open up that door for them to say that I'm not going to keep them on a certain path, they can go wherever they want to. Like in Dark Age of Man, literally you can drop them in vanilla. You roll a seed every once in a while with things just happening in the town or maybe happening in their path or whatever, they can engage it or not. Or maybe it would be a situation where they inadvertently, they have to get swept up in it, like a flood, for example. That stuff is going to happen to them and can affect them, or things can be affected by them. Excuse me. So you open up that whole wide world and let them go and I loved at the end of that thing where Jesse said it was a dance. I had that in my brain like 10 minutes before he said it. I was like, bingo. It's a dance. The GM may lead at times, the player may lead at times. It's a symbiotic relationship to where you're both engaged in that world. The players have a right to push back as the world pushes, and it's a flow. It just goes together and swing. Now, if you got one side doing all the heavy lifting, the DM just bearing his soul and spilling his guts and saying, this is the world and please do something. Please react to it. What can I do? Can I do this or can I do that? Yeah, what do you want to do? Put yourself there in the situation and respond to it in kind. I mean, I don't like to be prompted in certain things. I just like to pick up and run with it. And I would like to see everybody just kind of following suit with that mentality. And I mean, to be honest with you, I like players that just pick it up and roll with it. You know, just grab it by the short hairs and go. And, that's just me. I know there's different types of players, different types of games, and not wanting to be negative toward anybody because Lord knows I spent many a year playing Mother May I get to the point because I thought that's what it was. Now, granted, I still reacted in certain ways or whatever. And still when you're in a group of guys and you got different player play styles, and sometimes you yield to the other guys. And then it comes to your turn. So you find a nice balance of how everybody works together to where you're not disrupting so much, the harmony of the party, and it moves along. But you get me by myself, and like Jason, we can just roll off of each other and have a one-on-one session. It's fantastic. And a lot of guys I play with, we do that. We just pass it on to the next guy. Pass it, whether or not it's procedurally, like you got first initiative, or we're all choosing which way it goes. Like if a game says just the players get to choose who goes first and who goes. I don't necessarily like that. To swing it back around as far as like player agency, giving, the more player agency, giving opportunities for the GM to connect the dots and come up, it'd be fleet on his feet to come up with the situation and be responsive. Like I said, player push back, he pushes back, it's a dance. You swing it. Be responsive to it. I think I remember I was running through, I think we was playing Wizardry or Swords and Wizardry or whatever. But anyway, it was David and Jason, the caravan been waylaid. I think Todd might have been playing, or either joined us after that. Waylaid on the caravan, and then afterwards, David's like, oh, I'm going to Oakton to see my wife and whatever. It's been like a year or more he's been out. And I said, fine. Penciled it in. You're going to Oakton. Get there. create the town. His wife comes up, slaps him. Where you been? Our daughter's lost. All of a sudden their daughter's is lost, right? Even me. When I'm playing with somebody like, like Todd, when he's GMing and Joth. And I remember we was trying to escape that one thing. We was waiting till the guard left down the gangplank. We were out in the swamps, whatever, these bullywogs, and he's walking away. And then, we need to know if he's going right or left. We're pensive. We're waiting on to find out where he goes. So hopefully he won't go to the right. Maybe we could escape as far as just his walk. And Todd loves not knowing either. So he rolls the dice and he goes, okay, he went left. Okay. And then we did our plans from the map that was laid out in front of us, and we had to work around those set of situations. So I love the fact that Todd don't need to know what's going on and just rolls the dice to find out. And that keeps him fleet on his feet and dealing with what situation is unfolding with him, even when he rolls the dice to see what the inhabitants of the world are doing. And as a player, I like responding to the GM, this doing that too. I like, there's aspects of play whenever, I like, it's been a little bit of talk about like, board gamey aspects or resource management, I'll call it, right? Cause you have that in especially European board games, resource management, he was so pressured to get the heck out of there before his torch went out. Okay, I'm back. Anyway, before his poor connection, folks, before his torch flickered out and he would be in total darkness. So there was some pressure about that. So I love the fact that in games randomly or whether you're on a timed situation, that it actually affects you. The aspect of, doing Dawn of Man, I put gear in there. It's not for the sake of saying that you need gear. Yeah, there's prerequisite. I mean, if you're gonna get up in a certain area, you might need a rope or a hemp rope or something, to say that even do this. Or you may need to dig a hole, you may need something that would allow you to dig it. So it's not for the sake of like, and even the wear and tear on something, breakage, is a situation. I love it for the fact that it adds, not only adjust your situation that you're facing. Say there's counting arrows. Jason ran us through Blood and Bones. And in Blood and Bone, it said there's no need to count any of that stuff. No arrows, it can be there. And I'm like, bull crap. In fact, I scratched that out in the book. I put a big X on it. And when we were out there in the middle of a little keep area and all these slaves there, and we're trying to release them, and all the archers are on the battlement shooting down at us, and I was trying to shoot up there. What I was doing was shooting, and if the archer would fall off onto the inside, I'd sprint over there. I'd be watching my arrows because it made it more tense for me to resupply from that fallen individual, refill my quiver. So technically, wasn't using maps and minis, but technically it still added an aspect that I had to work around that situation that I was in. It wasn't just a given that I could pull out arrows like Hank from D&D. Couldn't do that. I didn't want to do that. It made it less thrilling for me. I needed something that was there. So I was counting those arrows, even though it wasn't in game and necessary. That's why it didn't break anything for me. It enhanced it for me when I did that. It was impertinent that I do that for my own enjoyment. So whenever I'm putting something like gear into a situation, what if you're doing that and you roll something breaks? And then you got to contend with that. Your back's against the wall. Those are the moments where you lose your breath and you go, oh crap, what is going to happen here? What's going to happen? I'm scaling this mountain. I lose the grappling hook breaks, which could be in Dawn of Man, maybe it's the antler horns or whatever I'm utilizing, and it breaks and falls and I'm stuck on the side of that mountain. Then all of a sudden I've got a crisis to contend with. That's what I want to see. I want to see situations where I have to adapt and adjust, and it challenges me to where I have to work around. And those often, most times, come from situations
where there's variables in there that you can't contend with and you didn't expect. And nothing is for sure. Life isn't for sure. You don't know what's going to happen. And if I can work in mechanically in some way that where something happens unexpectedly, and dice is a perfect way to have that random aspect come up. Dice or a card draw, or whatever mechanism you're doing, the mechanic you're doing, it's just a shame whenever that's not utilized in a way that where you say, oh crap, didn't know that. Oh, didn't that happen? Then I had to contend with that, and then I had to do what I needed to do or come up with a different way. It wasn't just automatically, I'm ascending that to the top of the mountain. Okay, if you do, you get through there. But if you have to make a check every once in a while, and you feel with bated breath that, oh yes, it's a success. Okay, it's still holding. I can go up. It has some urgency. It has some gravitas, as it were. So there's a lot of things that I love about gaming. Like I said, when you open up that world to wider player agency, to where the players can instigate where they're going and what direction they're going, and the DM is fleet enough foot that can deal with things on the, even love Dark Age of Man where we're dropping seeds, and you got to work that in there, connecting the dots. It's all like you connecting neurons in your brain, right? You're going like, oh, that's perfect, and then you have this wonderment of a, childlike wonderment of saying like, oh, that's perfect. I didn't see that one coming. And why do we play these games if we're not having to contend with or deal with or having these moments of like, oh man, that was perfect? Why whitewash all that or take it out of gameplay by assured knowledge that something it's already a given. You don't need it. If you're out there, you can just roll it up like in one roll. Like, if you need it, just say that you put it in your pack. dude, I put it in my pack, and if I don't have it, I got to think outside the box and think of another way of entering this situation. I just don't want it conveniently. I don't, the scripted stuff, you will not die, you will reach level 20, isn't that convenient. It isn't, it isn't, bewitching to me or becoming or anything. It's antecedent toward any kind of, enjoyable roleplay to me. So I want situations that can change and that can surprise you and that you have to contend with. Because of what are we here for if not for contending with crisis that could come up, just as in real life. When I go to the store, who am I say that the tire wouldn't blow, and then that could lead me off, fear me off, like Jason says time before. You have a breakdown, and what's going to happen? How are you going to contend with it? You got to do something. Oh, yeah, that's what I had to deal with. Nothing is for sure. And so those random aspects of the die, and as well as the GM getting thrown curveballs by the players going left instead of right, or saying that we want to stay here, or doing something that's totally unexpected and directionally, and then them saying, oh crap, they went over here. And that's what's beautiful about Dark Age of Man. It's like, I'm not setting as a GM that they're going through exactly this area. I don't put it there. You go where you want to, and I go, oh crap, they go over there. What is over there? And then I find out, Then I find out, filling a dot. Oh, they're going over the mountain range. Crap, what is in there? What could be in there? And what's going to happen on the way there? So you're witnessing organically this whole situation evolve with the same view that the players are. What is in the mountains? You're like, what's in the mountains? Oh, I don't know. Let's find out together. So that's what the whole deal about. I mean, if you can really grab onto that, let go of the reins, and have a little wonderment with the players and discover what's going on in different areas of the land that they decide to go into. Now, yeah, I'm talking about vanilla Dark Age of Man, because there can be things and objectives, and you can have, you can be accountable to certain, to your thane or your lord or whatever in that land that you told to go do a certain thing or get caught up. And the more you play, the more you get obligations on you. Unless you're playing a damn outlaw where you're doing whatever you want to do. But anyway, do what you like. That's what it's about. But opening that door for both player and GM to throw each other curveballs and to play on the fly like that is, to me, enjoyable. It's not that I don't love playing along with my buddies, going on a quest. And I say, how are we supposed to do this? I love it. It's all fun. It's all fun. I'm talking about, but the heights, the really pinnacle stuff is when stuff happens where you didn't expect it. And most of the time when you're sitting around, I remember sitting there watching, I think it was Mike Merles, Adam Coble, and a couple of other guys. They were sitting there talking, and the question came up. It's on YouTube somewhere. It was a couple of years ago when I saw this. What was the most memorable time? And I believe each and every one of them, I know like 3 of them were recounting times that was totally unexpected, totally organic, wasn't scripted, and they were just amazed that would have came out of the situation. That's what I'm talking about. Play where you have a high D20 or D100 probability that stuff is going to occur more so than not. Open the doors for it occurring. Let it occur. Play off of that. And, yeah, you have a good time. Anyway, I'm through blabbing. I got some things to do in the house. Y'all take care now. Here. All right. Bye-bye.